Real quickly before we begin, I want to thank this video's sponsor, CarMarshal.com. CarMarshal.com can save you lots of money on buying used or new vehicles, cars, trucks, school buses. If you want to save money, I'll have a link in the description down below.
Okay, now we got to straighten up.
All righty.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the April 11th, 2018 We the People in Meeting and Assembly conference call. We have a very simple mission, that is to restore government centered under our constitutions, both the state and the national constitution. We have some very simple rules. Everyone is welcome, especially our public servants are welcome. And we're really trying to stay focused on solutions that will lead to government recentered under our constitutions. The simple rules for participating tonight are, we simply ask that if you want the floor, say "may I" after the speaker is completed. If you're going to change the subject, be clear with your intentions to change the subject, and then as succinctly as possible, make your point. And when you finish, say "I yield." And the simple "may I" and "I yield" will keep the discussion organized and moving along without a lot of people stepping on each other. In terms of old business, I'd like to start the meeting by going over the 10 steps for assembly, which we sent out last week, and we talked through steps 1 through 6. And tonight, I'd like to cover 7 through 10. Who can help me? What is the basic intent of the 7th step? Anybody?
Roger, may I?
Yes, please.
This is Bob. I know you want to get started on step 7. One thing that might help to organize the assemblies, and this actually goes back to last week, is I know in our case, and it's probably true of most of the counties, when they send out the agendas for the county commission meeting, all the emails are open. So they're all shown. And, I think that would be a good source for recruitment because, of course, we know that all the emails are open record as far as the county is concerned. But that would be a good source for finding a lot of people that are concerned and attend the county commission meetings. And with that, I'll yield.
Okay, on regarding the attendance of the assembly, who can attend and who can't attend?
Well, I would assume the government officials cannot.
Correct. And bar members. Bar members are, by oath, they have an allegiance to another entity and not the Constitution, and they cannot attend either.
Well, I understand that, but I think it's fairly easy to sort out the government emails and,
okay.
The few attorneys that might be in there.
Yep. I like the idea. I really do.
I think the First Amendment explains it pretty succinctly. It says the right of the people peaceably to assemble, not the government servants.
Right. Now, let me back up, folks, for a minute. We know our founders developed a system of a Republican form of government, and we know that in a Republican form of government, all the authority resides with the people, and the people can loan temporarily some of that authority to their public servants, so long as those public servants, follow the supreme law of the land and the state constitution. So the question becomes now, how are our elected officials, take Florida, take our state legislature, how is our state legislature to comprehend the voice of we the people? Who can help me with that? Because this is very strategic. Who can help us? How is the voice of we the people to be expressed to the state legislature?
May I?
Yes, please.
Only when we list the grievances.
Okay, but how is it fair for me in Manatee County and you in Orange County to send them a list of grievances and they're supposed to act on it?
Well, I would say yes.
Well, then how would the government ever get anywhere? Because in the state of Florida, we got 20 million people, say 5%, write the legislators with their opinion about what needs to be done, and everybody's got a different opinion. How is the government supposed to understand what the voice of the people is?
If I may.
Yes, please.
We come together in assembly. We decide what we want to instruct them on. Then we instruct them from the grand jury.
Or directly from the assembly, either way.
That's right, yes.
And it's important for everybody to understand that the design of the founders is the people run the counties, then by assembly in the county, and then the assemblies in the county send delegates to the state assembly, and the state assembly runs the state, tells the state government what to do. So in Florida, where is our state assembly of we the people? Where is the state assembly of we the people in Florida?
In the county.
It's missing, right? It's missing in action. We forgot how to assemble.
Oh.
It's not happening. We have lots of groups. We've got Americans for Prosperity who are lobbying and debating with the legislature. We've got folks from FreedomWorks. We've got folks supporting the Second Amendment. And we all go on our trips to Tallahassee and get on our knees and ask the public service to please do their duty and obey their oath to the Constitution. But where is the assembly issuing resolutions, issuing corrective action notices of redress of grievances, and where is the statewide grand jury following up when the state legislature passes a bill that clearly infringes on the Second Amendment, like it recently did? The bill that was passed, as I understand it, the piece that I read about it, it was already in process when the event happened in Parkland, Florida. It was already being discussed in the legislature. Surprise, surprise. And this is the new strategy to take the guns, is to go state by state, and even if they have to, city by city. And the issue here was that piece of legislation actually, as written, creates criminals who were sitting at home, who had devices on their weapons that increased the speed of pulling the trigger or firing a shell. Okay, so that's craziness. It's totally against the Second Amendment, shall not be infringed. Even if you want a fast trigger or whatever you want, shall not be infringed. It's pretty clear. But then it went even further, and it created felons out of people who had things in their closet. It's absurd what the legislature did do. So what, if we had our Florida Assembly up and running, what would we do? What would the Assembly do? How would it work?
May I?
Yes, please.
We declare that new gun law they put in is unconstitutional.
Exactly, and send a resolution to the legislature to to that effect, that it is null and void ab initio, and that the Assembly would advise them that they best rescind it or revoke it. I'm not sure what the right term is the next time they meet. They should consider to rescind or revoke. So now, if you remove the voice of we the people, then what happens to the legislature? Who then controls it? The lobbyists, all of the private interests. So we abandoned our job of assembling. Does that make sense? We forgot to do it. Okay, so that's why these steps are so important. The folks up in Michigan have reestablished their assemblies. They've resettled every county. And now there's a big push on to try to get to 30 states where they have their assemblies up and running so that they can send delegates to, which body would they send delegates to? Who can help me? Which body would be the voice of the people at the national level? I hear Hagen clearing his throat. Go ahead, Hagen.
No, I want to hear other people.
Okay.
I talk too much.
All right. What is the body that the founders set up that is the nationwide body that expresses the voice of we the people?
If I may?
Yes, please.
Congress.
House of Representatives?
No. Good try, but no.
Are you?
Its initials are CC. That's the hint, CC. Anybody?
Constitutional Convention.
No. That's to write the document. The one that is to be set up to express the will of we the people nationwide is called the Continental Congress.
There you go, Bonnie. Bonnie said it.
There you go, Bonnie. Well done. Has anybody ever heard of the Continental Congress? That's we the people on the land assembling and instructing our national government, which is made up of the executive, the judicial, and the legislative branches, which would include the House of Representatives. We express our voice of we the people at the national level through the Continental Congress, and then they better follow up and do the corrective actions where they're out of bounds, or else what happens? What happens for a national group? Take the FBI or the CIA, and it steps out of the constitutional requirements of the supreme law of the land, and it comes to the attention of the Continental Congress. What happens?
We did that in 2009, and they ignored us.
Right. So one of the issues is you got to have enforcement, right? You got to be able to go through the effort of doing a resolution, issuing that resolution and the notice to everybody involved, giving them time to do the corrective action. If they don't do the corrective action, then the investigators for the grand jury, national grand jury, would need to dig in and get the evidence that supports the lack of appropriate corrective action, and then the grand jury can do its thing that includes either a presentment or an indictment, all the way through distraint and distress. And then what's the final element in enforcement? Distraint and distress would include filing claims against the surety bonds of the public servants. It could include claims of distraint against all of their personal assets, etc., to restore the victims. But what is the final step that our founders gave us for enforcement. Who can talk to me about Article 48 of the Magna Carta?
I'm just getting ready to tell you to read it.
What are its basic elements? Anybody? Article 48 of the Magna Carta. It basically is about evil customs, and it states that the honest people in the county are to select 12 knights, and the duty of those knights is to remove the evil customs in such a manner that they never come back. And those knights are secret. They're not publicly known. And they are authorized to do whatever is necessary to remove the evil customs. That's the final corrective action when nothing else works and you've got lawlessness that does not respond to the resolution from the people, and it does not respond to the claims of distrain and distress that come from the grand jury. Then we go back to common law, Article 48, Magna Carta. So we have the complete package. We know how to do it, thanks to a lot of people working and doing the archaeology, Joaquin and Chris and Hagen and folks in Michigan. We now know we've got to assemble in our counties. Right now, the urgency is to create the state assembly and help at the national level to create the voice of the people with 30 states doing their assembly and resettled. Then we can help at the national level by telling President Trump and the judiciary and the legislative branches what the will of the people is.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Wayne.
Excuse me, someone's got an open mic.
I'm trusting that all is well with you and your family at this time. I do want to thank you for joining us on the talk-through line where we could stay up to date regarding the programs that we are jointly connected.
Sounds like they done cut us out.
I don't know who that was. I just muted it out. Is everybody else still on the call?
We're here.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so let's go through the last 4 steps. Step 7 is the key message there is that the records of the assembly business are vital. That word vital is so important. Why? Because when we assemble and start to renew the expression directly of the voice of the people in the form of resolutions passed by our assembly and handed to our public servants appropriately, when we do that, there's going to be a good deal of pushback. Why do you think there's going to be pushback? Well, who are the public servants taking their orders from today if they're not taking their orders from we the people, which we know is the case? Who are they taking their orders from?
It's money.
It's money, and what else?
Power.
We have some evidence. What's that?
Lobbyists.
Lobbyists, and what else? We have some evidence from Marion County.
The Crown.
The Crown.
Oh, yeah.
The Crown. So, all of a sudden, we wake up our assemblies and we start to reestablish self-government by grabbing the steering wheel and doing everything lawfully, everything peaceably. And people are not going to like it because they're skimming a lot of money out of the system by hook or by crook, and we're now awake and off the couch, and we want them to act as fiduciaries and do the right thing. So we're going to face some pushback, in my opinion. It's highly likely, and we've got to just stay lawful every single step. We've got to stay peaceful, and we've got to follow the assembly process, the Constitution, the founding documents, the common law, the Bible, and of course, probably most importantly, because we're so far off the tracks, the Magna Carta. In my opinion, the Magna Carta is the single document that could help us get most of the way back, probably 80% of the way back to having lawful government. Okay, so it's very important that when that pushback comes, we have the records that prove that we followed the law, we took the minutes, we operated the assembly according to the proper steps, and that the resolutions were valid resolutions of we the people. What about step 8?
If I may.
Yes.
Russ, you said the Crown. Are you talking about the accredited British accredited registry in Marion County?
The evidence we have, Hagen, why don't you mention to the whole team what the evidence is?
The county attorney, I sent a email to the county commissioners asking by what authority they were doing things. And they wouldn't answer, but they gave it to the county attorney, and he fired back a long email, which I sent out to most of you guys, that they take their orders from the Crown was the end of his comment.
They actually said that. Wow.
Yes. So that's why I sent it out to so many people, so that they couldn't destroy it. Even if they raided me, they couldn't get rid of it.
I hope you sent one to North Carolina. Thank you, Hagen.
You're welcome.
I yield.
Okay, step 8. I want to move along quickly here. Step 8, it calls out the need for 2 handbooks or manual. One on the functions and operations of the assembly. That is to say that the assembly must decide upon how it's going to do business. The Michigan folks have adopted the meeting protocols that come from running business meetings, not Robert's Rules of Orders or a parliamentary manual, just how businesses typically run business meetings. They found this protocol in Inc. magazine, and they've used it very effectively since 2013. So when Florida gets our assembly up and running, we're going to have to decide how we want to run the operations, and that's one of 3 possibilities that I'm aware of. The second manual is the functions and operations of the grand jury. And we have a lot of draft material that could go into that manual now. With those 2 manuals, then we actually have the guidelines to bring new people into the assembly and into the grand jury and bring them up to speed and be able to do it in an organized, lawful manner. And don't forget, there's been so much bad stuff going on that a lot of people that have been hurt or their families or friends have been hurt will want to skip the lawful steps and just see the retribution or incarceration of the people doing the evil. And that's where we've got to be very, very careful. We've got to follow the lawful steps. We've got to document that we follow the lawful steps. And then we can demonstrate that we are following the rule of law, whether it's the Magna Carta, the Constitution, the Bible, etc. We're following the rule of law, and that our resolutions are valid resolutions, and the public servants must follow them. Okay, how about step 9?
If I may.
Yes, please.
Well, I guess step 9 has mainly to do with research.
Exactly. And teaching, learning and teaching, research, learning, and teaching. And it's because when you stop to think about it, back in the early 1800s, everything that we're now talking about was second nature to the folks. That's just every day how they did things. They rolled out of bed, and if it was an assembly day, those that wanted to assemble went to the assembly. And those that showed up took the decisions on behalf of everybody. Remember, everybody was blessed with the sovereignty of the king. The sovereignty of the king devolved on the shoulders of everyone. And as a result, those that showed up, they could make the resolutions telling the government what to do. And of course, they needed to follow the rule of law themselves as an assembly, or follow a process to change the law. So it's very important to continue to do the research. And then number 10 is all about bringing awareness. So when we get this assembly up and running in Florida, Bob Root, one of the questions we're going to need to wrestle with is how best to communicate with the folks in Florida. And I'm hopeful that we could work a deal out with you and your paper so that we could get maybe a page every month on the assembly business. Something like that, whatever would be required and appropriate. But in essence, it's very important because people are not aware of the system of government the founders gave us. They're only aware of what they've experienced in their lifetime, and what they've experienced in their lifetime is a corporate form of de facto government that is alien to what the founders gave us. So slowly but surely over time, if people began to read that the people assembled and at the state level and they decided to debate, amend, and pass a resolution that demanded that the state legislature correct the error of unconstitutional legislation associated with infringing on the Second Amendment, that might wake up some people. And we might get some more support for the assembly and the grand jury and even get some more counties going. Right? Because they could begin to see, oh, okay, I've been hitting my head against this brick wall trying to influence the government by donating to political parties, by lobbying personally in Tallahassee, and I haven't been able to get one thing done. And now I understand that the path forward is the path our founders gave us. It's the assembly and the grand jury and staying in the common law. Don't go into the statutory domain whatsoever. Stay in the common law. Okay, any questions or comments?
May I?
Yes.
Is the de facto government legitimate right now?
As far as I know the definition of the word legitimate, no, I'd say it's lawless. It's out of bounds.
Right, so they're operating as criminals.
I believe most are, if not all, because as far as I know, they're all getting compensated from a corporation, and there is no delegated authority for a corporation, instead taking the place of a Republican form of government.
So is there any consequences once we take back the government?
Well, notice what I'm advocating is very different than what I thought we were on. I thought we were on a mission to reconstruct the de jure and then shut down the corporation. That's really not our mission. The mission is really to reestablish the assemblies and the voice of the people. That's what's missing in the system the founders gave us. So even if we went in and reconstructed the de jure county government and state government, we'd still be missing the voice of the people. So to recreate the voice of the people, we do the assemblies and the grand juries, and then we can address the specific lawless issues that we see that at the state level in each state or at the county level in each county, that the Assembly decides are the most important issues to address. And in my opinion, there's 2 or 3 different ways to look at these issues. One way is what activity by the public servants is causing the most pain and suffering of the people. If you look through that lens, you might decide the most important priority is to stop the interference of the government on family relationships and taking kids out of families and what have you, and put that back into the private sector where it belongs with family, friends, churches, and charitable organizations, and get the government out of it. That might be something that a statewide assembly decides that's pretty important. Other assemblies might decide, you know what, this infringement on the Second Amendment is just the start of what they're trying to do, and the most important thing of all is to restate that, get that revoked and rescinded lawfully. But it's up to the people to decide. Another lens that you could look at is what is causing the biggest waste of money, right? What activities are the government involved in that they have no delegated authority in that are costing a lot of money? I'll give you one example here in Manatee County. I went to the school board meeting yesterday, and as I remember going through school all the way up to the 8th grade, we did not have any counselors, whether you call them guidance counselors or whatever you want to call them. In other words, if there were problems that came up, if there were behavioral problems or any kind of serious emotional issues, we worked together to solve them, or the teacher got involved and got the parents involved, and we ended up working them out. Well, I can tell you today in Manatee County, there's a whole pile of counselors that are in 1st through 8th grade, and they presented their case to the school board yesterday at the meeting that there aren't enough counselors and they're not making enough money. They need a bigger budget. Surprise, surprise. So remember, guys, if you want to learn what's really going on, the dynamic, read a book called Parkinson's Law. It's the study of the British Navy from the time when they had lots and lots of ships at sea and very few humans on shore supporting them. And then the number of ships at sea went way, way down, and the number of people on shore supporting them went way up. And it's the basic story of how all bureaucracies known to man work. They all have a huge incentive to get bigger, to defend the status quo. Don't change. Just keep demanding more and more resources. And the only way you can stop a bureaucracy from growing is you must starve it of resources. Otherwise, it'll consume everything. And we can look at the history of the government since, say, about 1900 to 2000 or to 2018, and you watch, if you map the percentage of the GDP of this country consumed in government, my guess is it was down around the 3, 4, maybe 5% in the early 1900s, the late 1800s. And today, if you add state, federal, county, local government all together, including the cost of running the UN, you're probably at about 50% of the economy, or getting very close. And it's just going to keep growing if we don't stand up our assemblies. We've got to do this.
May I?
I yield.
May I?
Yes.
Where does the bar mafia fit into this? The way I see them, they are sadistic parasites of their own species, and there's no use for them whatsoever.
Well, I'm not sure I could agree that there's no use, because in theory, if you had a well-intentioned lawyer, not attorney, but lawyer who really understood the law, then there could be some productive uses, especially when you go into commerce and some of these complex commercial transactions that take place. But fundamentally, in running our lives, they really have nothing to do with our lives. And as you know, the original 13th Amendment said that if you have a title of nobility and you run for office, you lose your citizenship. So that tells you exactly by law that as the assemblies get up and running, I wouldn't be surprised that there will be resolutions forthcoming from the floor that will say that the county government must stop the employment of anybody that it is unlawful to employ, including any bar member. That is a likely resolution coming out of an assembly, in my opinion.
If I may.
Yes.
The 13th Amendment says, if anyone accepts a title of nobility, they lose their citizenship and they cannot run for office. All attorneys are esquires. That's what the bar from England requires.
Correct. Yep, great. Okay, folks, I'd like to move on and ask Hagan, if he would please, to step forward and bring us up to date on some of the training and education that's going on with his team in Marion County. Hagan.
All right. It will be a little bit lengthy, but I'll try to keep it as short as possible. I was talking to the guys before the call started. I have a document that I want to send out to you, Roger, and ask that you send it out to the group. That document is called People or Citizens, Which One Are You? And it's a document that everyone should read and comprehend, so I want to expound on it a little bit. Our United States Constitution has a preamble. The preamble is actually not a preamble. It is an enactment clause. It tells where the power comes from. It comes from the people. It don't come from the citizens. If you're a citizen, you're a subject. You're subject to things, depending on what you're a citizen of. So if you're carrying a driver's license, for example, you're a citizen. If you have a voter registration card, you're a citizen, and you've said so, and you signed the document. You relinquished yourself to the powers of the national or the federal government, and that's a problem. Now, I want to go a little bit further in the U.S. Constitution to the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights only secures rights to people, not citizens, not anything other than person, not anything other such as persons and so forth. Now, the 14th Amendment is very clear. It says persons born or naturalized, comma, and subject to the jurisdiction thereof, okay? People are not subject to the 14th Amendment. Citizens are. So that being said, now I want to go back to the Florida 1838 Constitution. It has a preamble. The preamble is the enactment clause. I want to go now to the 1968 Florida Constitution. You talked before about the right of assembly, Article 1, Section 5. The people shall have the right peaceably to assemble, comma, to instruct their representatives, comma, and petition for a redress of grievances. Let's read that without commas. The people shall have the right peaceably to assemble, to instruct their representatives, okay? Right there is our assemblies, all right? Take the commas out of it. The commas in there breaks it up or makes it seem to be something that it's not, okay? Now I want to go to the enactment clause. Article 3, Section 6. It says, every law shall embrace but one subject and matter properly connected therewith, and the subject shall be briefly expressed in the title. No law shall be revised or amended by reference to by reference to its title only, I'm sorry. Laws to revise or amend shall be set out in full, the revised or amended act, section, subsection, or paragraph of the subsection. The enactment clause of every law shall read, be it enacted by the legislature of the state of Florida. There is no enactment clause on any of the statutes, codes, and ordinances. Okay, they may have a title, but they don't have an enactment clause. Without an enactment clause before each of them, they're invalid. Now, someone also asked before about something, whether it was lawful or not, and I spoke in the middle of someone talking and said invalid. The word is valid or invalid. So the Florida Constitution, from other than 1838, which was accepted in 1845, all the rest of them are invalid. They weren't accepted into Congress. They weren't done by the proper process, and they're not a valid constitution. So that being said, now we know who's running everything. We know it's the Bar Association. Now, also the word person. Person can be used in a lot of different ways, has a lot of different meanings. A citizen of the United States can be used in a lot of different ways and has a lot of different meanings. But people has one meaning, only one. And that word people is what, if you claim to be anything but people, you have no rights. You're a subject to the things that you sign yourself into by these adhesion contracts. And if you read this document that I'm going to be sending to Roger, it very well lays these things out, okay, where it says people or citizens, which one are you? I learned this a long time ago. I began rescinding the adhesion contracts that I had. I have rescinded all but one, and I'm not sure yet whether I ever want to rescind it or not, and that's the Social Security. Now, Social Security was, every one of them have been used as a false and misleading statement. They tell us it's the law when, in fact, it is not. There is ways out of Social Security right now. You can tell your employer, if you work for someone, and they do have a form, I don't recall the number, but I can get it, that you fill out and give it to your employer. He no longer is allowed to take out any deductions from your pay because there is no law requiring you to do it as one of the people. But if you're a citizen, it's a different story. So you can't get out of it if you're claiming to be a citizen. You have to relinquish those things and claim yourself to be the status that you really were created by your Creator. And He didn't create citizens, He created people. So with that, I will yield. But there's one more thing that I want to say that's off subject. This is about parties in the court system, the de facto court system, which is not valid either. But in the de facto system, they tell you that you can't come in there and represent yourself or anyone else unless you're an attorney. Their rules, their own rules, and I catch them on this stuff all the time. Rule 1.210, 1.210 says very clearly that you can be represented by another person if you're incompetent to represent yourself, like a next friend and that sort of thing. You do not have to be represented by an attorney, and they can't stop you. I put this email into the court clerk in Marion County and the 5th Judicial Circuit. I gave them about, I believe it was 15 questions. They're refusing to answer any of the questions. In those questions are included the law of peace, which is owed to us, and then the Army-Navy manual. I'm looking for it here so I can give you the manual number. It's FM 27-589. Military government under the Lieber Code and the issuance of this thing by Abraham Lincoln in 1861. In Marion County, when I met with the property assessor, I demanded that he remove my name as an uppercase name and put it proper spelling according to the English language. He did that. I demanded that he remove my property designated as real estate and redesignated as private property. He did that. Now I'm moving to take my property off the tax roll because there's no lawful authority for them to tax it to start with. The founders said that we are freeholders and we cannot be disseized of our freehold estate. Those words are important. Now, the lawyer came back with this 1861 thing. I think she thought that I would not be knowledgeable on it, but she was dead wrong. And I informed her not only was the 1861 Constitution invalid, but all the rest of them outside of the 1838 were also invalid. And if I wanted to push the issue, I could nullify the 1838 one also. So with that, I'll yield.
May I?
Yes.
That was Hagan, right?
Yep.
He just mentioned that it says that we are freeholders and we can't be deceived out of our freehold estate.
Deceased, not deceived, deceased. I think it's D-E-I-S-S-E-D. That means unlawfully taken away.
Well, wouldn't adhesion contracts that you had no idea that you were deceived, I don't know what, into thinking that you had to get a driver's license, that you had to sign up for these adhesion contracts? Isn't that also taking away your freehold?
That's right. That's exactly right. Everything you own is a freehold. Your life, your liberty, your money in your pocket, your house, your automobile, everything. They're doing it in all of it, and they're perjuring themselves when they tell you it's the law that you have to do it. They don't tell you that it's the law of the corporation. It's not the law. It's not a valid law. It's the law of the corporation, not the lawful de jure government. And that's why I read about the enactment clauses and in this document how it lays it out so succinctly, and then the 14th Amendment and how we have been conned and duped into subjecting ourselves as a 14th Amendment citizen. There were no 14th Amendment citizens prior to 1868. But with that 14th Amendment, they conned people and claimed to be freeing the slaves. They didn't free the slaves. They made everybody subject to the 14th Amendment if you sign your name to any of those adhesion contracts. Hopefully that answers your question.
Well, so the adhesion contract is invalid from the very beginning.
Void ab initio, the Supreme Court said, from the very beginning.
Okay.
Regarding that point, I'd like to put a possibility on the table. It wouldn't surprise me that a state assembly of we the people might consider a resolution that within the borders of the state, for any public servant to consider someone to be a citizen, they must produce a wet ink signature signed under conditions of full disclosure without threats, duress, or coercion that the people that is being addressed signed to forego their status as one of the people and took on voluntarily, knowingly, willingly, and intentionally the status of a citizen.
May I?
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, but
Roger, give me 1 second, please. Look at Article, I believe it's Article 4, Section 2, about the privileges and immunities. The reason that's like that is because people are immune from all those things. But if you're a citizen, you're entitled to those privileges in those things. So those things are in the Constitution. That might be a little bit helpful. I yield.
Article 4 what? Section 2?
Section 2, yes.
I'll read it very quickly. The citizens of each state shall be entitled to all privileges and immunities of citizens of the several states. A person charged in any state, okay, it goes on. So that's the part about the privileges and immunities. Now they use the word citizens, and then in the next paragraph they use the word person with a capital P. At the time of the Constitution was being written, does anyone know if the definition of person at that point included corporations? I don't know when that happened. Okay, I'd like to go over just a few little tidbits of news that I want to bring people up to date with, and then we'll go into open mic. And Hagan, when you get me that paper, I will send it out to everybody.
All right.
Yesterday,
of that lawyer that said he's Hagan, that he answers to the Crown.
I didn't hear the first part of your question.
Can we get a copy of the note from that Marion County lawyer that said he answers to the Crown?
Yeah, I believe I can dig it back out of my. Yeah,
okay.
we've got it. I sent it out to a lot of people. But
okay,
I'll
but if you get it to me, I'll send it out to the whole email list.
Yeah, I'll. Roger, do you still have it?
I don't know. I'll have to dig through.
Yeah, I'll have to.
May I about these adhesion contracts? Or you want me to wait?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Mark. Say again.
May I talk about that adhesion contracts that Hagan was just talking about?
Sure, go ahead.
I showed that to Roger last week, is when you sign your driver's license, just write in real small letters behind it without prejudice. And then you can change your mind. Actually, it'd be on anything you sign, just write the words without prejudice. I yield.
In addition, for everybody's benefit, Bill Lovett discovered that if you're forced into signing something that you really don't want to sign, but you find you must do it either for your own benefit or your family or friends' benefit, if you put the initials capital V period, capital C period before your signature, that also is one way to deal with threats, duress, and coercion. Okay, just a couple tidbits. Yesterday I went to a speech in Sarasota by Commander Kyle Raines. He's the media chief at U.S. Central Command in Tampa. And he has only got 2 more weeks and he's leaving this post to a new job. But he did a decent job explaining some things, but anytime anyone asked him a tough question, like those of you on the phone, hopefully you already know that last year one of our most modern warships was cruising in the Black Sea and a Russian airplane went over the ship and everything on the ship died. Everything. The engine stopped, the navigation stopped, the radio stopped, even the helicopter sitting on the fantail of the ship became disabled. Okay? The ship had to be towed into port. It was quite an embarrassment. After that incident, in the last quarter of last year, there were 2 or 3 other Navy collisions where Navy ships crashed into tankers and freighters and that sort of thing, and a fishing boat. And of course, the Navy is blaming it on the captains, firing captains. But in essence, I asked him, what are the root causes of these events? And he wouldn't answer. Whether he knew or not, he just danced around it. So unfortunately, it wasn't very productive. I especially approached him afterwards and asked if he would be willing to work with me to help our veterans who are being abused by our legal system. And he said he would consider it, so I've sent him an email, and we'll see if he will hopefully get us engaged in some higher level discussions with people inside the military that are on the law side of the military. Second point is, those of you that may have been following the news heard that President Trump deployed troops to the border. Subsequent to that, I talked with one of our people in Southern California with feet on the ground around San Diego, And he said all of the inspection posts along the border by San Diego have been abandoned. And he says, I don't know what they're talking about putting troops there. There's nobody there. So California, in an act of treason, in my opinion, has basically opened up the border, and the news media are completely covering it up. Then the last thing I'd like to talk about is it was something new to me, and I don't want to spend any real time on it other than just to introduce it as a concept, and folks can go do what you want with it. But I was very surprised to learn about 3 or 4 months ago of a device called a Q laser that uses light to fix problems inside your body, biological, physiological problems in your joints, etc., using laser light. I had never heard of it. So I did a little more research, and I discovered that there's a whole area of science called biophotons. Okay, photons are light. It's what light is, and it's got characteristics of both waves and particles, physics-wise. So biophotons. So it turns out every cell in our body emits biophotons. This is light that is too weak for the eye to sense. But what's the purpose? Why are all these cells generating light, and what's the function of the light inside the body? So I decided to go to Amazon and try to pick up a book or two on biophotons. I'm just curious about, I took a biology course, never learned anything about biophotons. And lo and behold, there's only one book listed on Amazon that was published in 1992. It's a 400-page book written in German. There are no English language books on biophotons. So apparently, to the best of my understanding, the whole field is being suppressed in English language countries. And it wouldn't surprise me that it's because of the pharmaceutical industry not liking the idea of fixing biological problems with light instead of drugs. That's it. I'd like to yield, and we've got a few minutes left and do open mic. Any subject relevant to moving the ball forward for reestablishing constitutional government?
If I may?
Yes.
The VC stands for vicoactus. When you put the V period, C period before your signature, always before, not after, it says that you're signing under duress. You're being forced to sign. You can type in YVC before your name, before your signature, and it'll bring up several different things about that. And that's what I did while you were talking.
Thank you.
So it means, it's a Latin term, vicoactus. V, a capital V, little I, 2 words, vicoactus, C-O-A-C-T-U-S.
VC.
VC.
VC, yes.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Open mic.
If I may.
Yes.
Biophotons is why blondes have more fun.
I'm sorry, say again?
Biophotonics is why blondes have more fun. That bright blonde hair gives off light. I yield.
I'd like to chime in.
One of the profound lessons I picked up just by finding little articles, this lady had Lyme disease. She took all the conventional remedies, couldn't get fixed. She went to the Netherlands and got treated in a clinic that used light, and she got completely fixed up. In addition, the key reason our DNA is formed in a helix is to store photons. And if you can detect the photons, you can detect sick tissue from good tissue, because sick tissue doesn't have its full complement of photons. I yield.
If I may?
Yes.
So yeah, just the concept is pretty interesting. I learned a few years ago about chlorella or spirulina.
Could you speak up a little bit, please?
Sure. I learned a few years ago. Is that better? Is that better?
Yeah, much better.
Thank you. All right. So I learned a few years ago about chlorella, like chlorophyll, chlorella, and spirulina, and you can get them in tablets or capsules or even in bulk. I buy it in bulk. But what you do is it ends up being a extremely green, fine powder when you get it, and it's an algae that's grown mostly out of Japan in certain freshwater, pristine areas. And what it is, it's sun, water, and light, pure water. But anyway, so long story short, you start adding this to your diet, sprinkle it on salads or put it in a capsule, whatever you want to do. Put it in some iced tea and slam it down or whatever. However you want to do it. I tried different ways. It's not tasteful or anything. It tastes like grass. But you take that and you put yourself actually outside in the sunlight, and that's supposedly an ancient remedy where they were taking the chlorophyll, which all those things process sunlight, right? And they create reactions, right? So you consume this, and then you sit in the sun, and that's the old way. I yield.
And what sort of remedy? What sort of problems is it designed to remedy?
Well, it pretty much clears up everything. It balances your pH. Most people that are ill or have a low pH, they're acidic. And so this the process of the photosynthesis that goes on between that being in your body and then getting absorbed into your cells, and then you taking on sunlight creates a healing throughout your body. It pretty much everything. It just makes you healthy. That's why a lot of those people live very long too. At least that's what they say, right? So, but anyway,
John, would you mind sending me something on that, and I'll send it out to the team?
Oh, sure. I'll dig it up. Give me a day or so.
Thank you.
All right.
If I may.
Yes.
I've been looking at photon therapy in Orlando and in Jacksonville. They have it for cancer, and they can direct it only toward the cancer, and it doesn't touch any of the good tissue. Only the cancer does. So I'm looking at it as if I need it as a last resort.
Are you saying proton, P-R-O-T-O-N, or photon, P-H-O-T-O-N?
No, proton therapy. I'm sorry.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very different than photons.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's right. Okay.
Thank you.
I'd like to chime in.
Yes.
About this VC, I use C.V, which is coerce void. Talk English to them. They know what's going on. And by the way, you put C.V, it lays the charge on that contract because they're coercing you. It goes back into them. Coercion. Void. Thank you. I yield.
Thank you, Iran. Last call. We're about 4 minutes over. Last call. Questions, comments?
May I?
Yes.
Is there any activity on what's happening in Charlotte or Terry Trussell? Any updates on anything?
There's no detailed updates, but at a high level of abstraction, there are 5 states working together: Florida, Nebraska, Oregon, Idaho, and Nevada. And it looks like maybe a 6th state may be coming on that I could announce next week if it happens. And the idea is that when you go to We the People CommonLawGrandJury.com, what you're seeing is the building up of a file of the evidence of the criminality. And as that builds up, then all of the states plan to operate in cooperation to help each other. And that's about where I want to leave it on this discussion. So the answer is no detailed progress yet.
Yes, I guess 4 days have.
If I may.
Yes.
Okay, are you?
this is just a thought for our future calls. I suggest we start thinking who would be the 12 knights in today's terms.
Great idea.
That's all I have. I yield.
Any suggestions, Gordon?
No, I need to find out. The reason I'm asking is I want to know. I don't know myself, and I want to know who would be the modern 12 knights.
Yep.
If I may?
Yes.
That has to be secret, and I would suggest something of the nature, nobody gets to know who that is, but if someone wants to volunteer themselves, maybe a lottery drawing of numbers or something, because they can't be known. If they're known, they're in big trouble. I yield.
Yeah, that's for sure. It's got to be secret. I didn't think he was asking for names. I thought he was asking for how would we find these knights? But
that's exactly what I mean. I don't want names. I know they have to be secret, but what kind of people would be, or what kind of who are considered knights in this day and age?
Well, let me put it to you this way. It can be anyone, but ideally they are courageous. They know how to solve problems effectively and completely, and they are competent in the common law and the Constitution.
I think the rest of this conversation ought to be taken privately. I don't think we ought to be doing it over the air.
Agreed.
In detail, and it's not wise to put that out there where everyone can hear it.
Yep. Okay, last call. Any other last question?
May I?
Yes.
Roger, the form you were talking about earlier, W4V, like in veto. And if you look at it, it looks like something when you go to one of these registers, if you want to give a donation, like $1, $4, and $5. It's almost the same way. It's voluntarily.
I'm sorry, I'm not comprehending what you're telling me.
Yeah, that form you were asking about, people would get it from their employers, and then they would fill it out and hand it to them.
Oh, I see.
It's a W4V.
V is in Victor?
Yes.
Okay, W4V. Okay, that's the one that Hagen was talking about. I got it. Thank you.
That's about Social Security, right?
Social Security, yep.
Yeah, well, at the same time, if you sign that and they're not going to withdraw that money for you, your employer ought to give you the matching amount of money that he has to submit.
Well,
good point.
I'm retired. I went there this Monday and it's the Social Security and signed it right there in front of them. And then I sent 2 copies to my employer, which is they give me a pension check, and I'm waiting to see how long it's going to take now for them to do it. But
okay.
Hey, Charlotte County, this is Charlotte County COPWATCH, and I just wanted you to know that I am using this stuff under fair use, and also remember to like and subscribe this channel. Also, too, keep in mind I do not make any money on YouTube. This is 5 hours work a day, fighting for freedom. And you can donate with PayPal and Patreon. I just want you to think about this. If everybody gives to PayPal and Patreon is every month. Actually, PayPal you can do every month. I have 12,000 subscribers. If everybody gives, I can quit my regular job and go full-time investigations on Charlotte County and possibly even more and beyond. So just keep that in mind. If everybody helps out, I can go full-time doing this. Thanks.